Hey, welcome. This presentation is entitled The History of Native Math and Science, and today I'll be your guest lecturer. My name is Dr. Kent Blansett. I'm the Langston Hughes Associate Professor of Indigenous Studies and History at the University of Kansas. I come from 5 tribes, so I'm Cherokee Creek, Choctaw, Shawnee, and Potawatomi descendant. I come from 3 family lines, that of the Blanket, Panther, and of course the quintessential Indian name, Smith, is also in my family line. An interesting place that I had a chance to visit is down south of here, and it was known that our people also came from Mexico. The great Sequoia, who will come up with our alphabetical system and syllabary, actually will pass away going back to Mexico to look for our ancient ancestors. And of course, at Chichen Itza, there's a pyramid that you can see here in the middle. That pyramid that you see in the middle is fascinating because they use a different kind of sound technology. Now, I'd read about this temple for many, many years. And what's interesting about it is that it follows the equinox. So there's serpents that go down the stairwell of this temple. And of course, when the sun turns just right, what it looks like is the serpent is descending the staircase when it reflects the shadows onto the staircase. The other thing that it does is, and I'd always heard of this, you can walk up to the stairs and you can clap. And when you clap, it'll go all the way up the stairs and then it'll come back and it'll echo back to you. You'll hear your clap repeated. And so when I was there, I asked one of the indigenous peoples about that phenomenon. He said, okay, why don't you come with me? Let's go to these stairs and let's clap. So we go to the stairs and we clap. And it goes up and it comes back and it wasn't a clap. And he was like, do you know what that is? And I was like, it's not a clap. He's like, yeah, what do you think it is? And I was like, oh, it sounds like a bird. And he's like, you're exactly right. It's a quetzal bird, which was a sacred bird, at least for the Mayan. So what they began to figure out is how to change and transform sound. And what they were doing is using the staircase to elongate sound waves and transform that sound and return it back in a different version of that, right? Just from a simple clap. So out of this, they were using sound technology even in the architecture of at least Mayan cities like Chichen Itza. Well, you can see down below at least the quetzal bird, which is known also as kind of a feathered serpent. You can see that long tail of the bird itself, which made it kind of like a serpent. And then, of course, the wings itself, which was important because it could go above worlds and below worlds, which we'll talk about as we move through this lecture. Well, you can see at the bottom of that is a traditional ball court. Now, in the ball court, they also use sound transference technology. So if you stand like we're standing here in this picture, this is a picture I took, there's all the way at the other end another kind of position or wall at the very end of that ball court. And there's a group of people that are standing there. Well, if you walk out about 15 feet from that wall, you can't hear anything. But you walk back in 15 feet, you can hear every single word that the people on the other side, which is 2 to 3 football fields in length, you can hear every single word that they're saying crystal clear. So it's almost as to say that sound transference technology is really critical, and you can only derive that through higher forms of architecture and engineering and the application of science and mathematical principles. Now, this far slide over here happens to be an observatory, which was a Mayan observatory, so they would use that to be able to chart the movements of the sun on the elliptical. They would also be charting Venus, they would be charting Mars, and other movements of the planets to be able to understand when times of planting would be best, when times of harvest would be best, when times of ceremony would also be best for the Mayan peoples. Now, the Mayan also had a really intricate form of a calendar, which was a 356-day calendar. They also had a complex system of mathematics. They were the first to derive the concept of zero of any people. And zero is absolutely important if you're to do any work in engineering, architecture, or astronomy. You got to have a point of zero. They used at least a shell to be representative of zero. As you can see here, they use dots. So 1 dot would be 1, 2 dots would be 2. A lot of times they would translate this as a single stick. And then you would have a bundle of sticks would represent 5. So you get 1 square bar of that. You add a dot above it, it becomes 6, 7, 8, and so on. But out of this, you can say the number 28 by writing it in a certain way, right? So you have at least the number 28 is 1, times at least 20 plus 8. And that's written here towards the bottom. You also have the number 433 as it's written in Mayan and as it's also written in modern day mathematics. What I'm trying to get at here is that we had the ability to go into the thousands. We had complex forms of mathematics integrated into our systems. And some of this had to do with also the importance of astronomy to our peoples. Now, one of the important things to understand about astronomy as a science is that for Native peoples, what we did is we oftentimes would be charting the sun's movement on the ecliptic. So the way the sun moves is the sun rises and sets in two different places all the time. We know that, right? It rises in the east, it sets in the west. But the thing about it is it's moving across the ecliptic or that horizon all through at least fall, winter, spring, and summer. And so it has different places along that elliptic, and then it moves back again to its origin spot. And it does this every single year, moving along that elliptical line. And you can track where the sun's movements are to figure out where you are in relation to the summer equinox, the spring equinox, or fall equinox. And that is incredibly important for planting crops. So people would do this by standing in one place and charting where that sun was moving every single day. And this would create calendar systems that were integrated into the architecture for many native cities. We can see this in evidence at Chaco Canyon. Now, Chaco Canyon is in New Mexico, and it's for the Anasazi or ancestral Dene and Pueblo peoples. And of course, at Chaco Canyon, there's a sun dagger, which is on the top of there. And you can see these like 3 stones that are kind of laid up here. And for years, it was just kind of dismissed. Scientists didn't really look at it very closely. But behind at least those 3 stones that are set up is a spiral design. And what you begin to notice and track is that it creates a sun dagger. And that dagger will eventually bisect in certain areas as the sun's moving along that elliptical. It will create a dagger form for you to be able to tell out when the summer, spring, fall, and winter equinoxes are, or the high point of that movement. So there was a solar calendar. Now, the back part of one of the great cities of Chaco Canyon had this giant wall that followed at least the mesa. And within that giant wall, there was also cairns. And those cairns tracked the movements, not of the sun, but of the moon. So Chaco Canyon was one of the first places in the world to not only have a solar calendar, but also a lunar calendar built into it. So it was one of the most accurate calendars in all of the world at the time of its origins, which was over 1,000 years ago. The other thing that they were able to build, and this is what NASA was really interested in using GIS technology for, is they were studying these roads. And so this picture over here that basically showcases these yellow and red lines, those are at least roadways. And there was hundreds of miles of roadways that were carved out by at least the Pueblo. And these were managed by runners that would tie in multiple Pueblo and Anasazi communities together. And of course, out of this, some of these roads went nowhere, is what they would say, but they would begin finding lots of pottery shards at the ends of these roads. Oftentimes, what it was is that pottery carried prayers. And so people would go to these places and they would give up the pottery, which would be giving up a prayer or giving up a blessing. So it's also told to people when you're traveling, at least through Chaco Canyon, if you happen to visit it, please don't be picking up the pottery shards, right? Because these represent prayers. These represent blessings of ancient times and should be left at least for those prayers to be heard and not picked up or desecrated.